Bringing you the rigs, the trucks, the laboratories, and offices, this is the Oil and Gas Contractors Connect podcast with your host, Ryan Ray.
Welcome to another edition of the Oil and Gas Contractors Connect podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ray, and this is the show where we get to connect you with folks all across the industry, upstream, midstream, downstream, wherever they may be. We bring them so you can learn from them. If you want to be on the show or connect with me, my LinkedIn profile is in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. And finally, this show is brought to you by R2 Global. For more information, go to GoR2.com. That's GOR, the number 2.com, and be sure to check out the website. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. On today's episode, we have on Charles Birdsall, who works for No Frills Oil Company. It's a family-owned business up in the northeastern part of the United States. Charles, thank you for coming on today. And I say northeast. Where in the northeast are you guys located?
Hi, thank you, Ryan, for having me on. It's a pleasure. We're located up here in Maine, just about as far northeast as you can get in the U.S., just outside of Acadia National Park area. It's part of the area that we cover.
Okay. And I got to ask about the name, No Frills. Where did No Frills come from?
Yeah, the company was founded in 1980, 38 years ago now, by my folks, and we started as a traditional mom and pop heating oil delivery service. And it was basically that. It was just a COD, cash on delivery, no service department, no extra products at that time, and no terms. Everybody just paid at the time when they got a delivery, and it was nice and simple and allowed us to be quite competitive against some of the major competitors in the area.
Right. And so what all services, it's like you guys have grown over the 38 years, so what all services do you guys currently offer, and how does that kind of fit into the larger oil and gas scene? Yeah,
so at this point in time, we offer heating oil, diesel, kerosene, and propane, and we've also become a distributor for lube oil. And so that's based on what our customers were looking for, being able to meet their needs, both our residential and commercial customers up here in the Northeast. A lot of folks traditionally used to burn wood heat to heat their homes, and as new homes have been built and the area has continued to grow, more people are using heating oil or propane, which is looked at as a cleaner source of energy. And we're far enough away and quite rural, most of the places that we cover, so there's not a major gas line running through the towns that we serve.
Right. So I was going to ask you about that. You are, looking at the map on your website here, you are way, 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 way up there. I am down here in Texas, and you are, I'll have to put in the address just to see how far of a drive it would be while we're talking here. But that's what I was going to ask you about is, you talk about heating and access to fuels and stuff like that. Where are you guys getting this from? Because we're looking at the map here, there's not a lot of oil and gas infrastructure built out there. So how are you supplying your customers?
Yeah, in the Northeast, we're quite fortunate to have a refinery just to the north of our state, up in St. John, is the Irving Refinery, and that's the closest major refinery. They serve the Northeast, and they bring into a seaport not far from where we're located, and then most of it comes to the terminals that we pull from is brought in by truck.
Interesting. And, I don't know, I've never been to Maine, so what are some of the obstacles that you face with, I'm assuming it's cold and icy and snowy. So you're trying to service customers who are trying to stay warm, but it seems like you guys would have a hard time just staying active during the winter because of the adverse weather conditions.
Yeah, you're 100% right, Ryan. This time of year, it's the time that our customers need us the most, and it is the most difficult time of the year to get out there to them. You've got the ice, snow, quite cold temperatures. Right now we're looking at temperatures. It's a beautiful sunny day if you just looked out the window, but when you look at the thermometer out there, it's in the teens, and the wind chill's pushing it down around zero for a temp, if not below zero. So it does. That's one of the major obstacles that we have to deal with is road conditions this time of year, and we make sure we've got a good fleet that's operational and ready for the winter, and we've got a really good crew of employees working with us, and we get out there and make sure everybody stays warm through the winter.
And what about storing these products in the winter? I mean, is there any kind of special precautions that you guys had to take in the really rigid cold to I don't know if the weather, if it's where you're storing it enough, would impact it. Where the size might compact and then it warms up, it kind of stretches out a little bit. Maybe the weather doesn't swing back that much, but is there something unique about storing these products in the really cold temperature that you guys have come across?
Yeah, so most people in the industry that, in the same place as we are in the industry, if you're delivering propane, most of the propane tanks are only filled to about 80% to allow room for expansion that can take place, especially as we move into the spring and summer months. People that have their tanks filled up before the summer months then don't use it so much through the summer. You've got to leave that room for expansion. On the other end of the spectrum, when it starts getting really cold with propane, we deal with the vaporization rate, which, we deliver a liquid product, and then it's actually a vapor that the customer uses, and it changes in their tank. And the colder it gets, that vaporization rate changes. So the amount that they have in their tank, the physical wet surface area they refer to as what's in the tank, can be quite challenging in the winter to make sure we time the deliveries, from an operational point of view, where it's going to be efficient, and at the same time to make sure that we don't have customers running out. And with heating oil, most of the heating oil tanks are located right in someone's basement, so we don't have to deal with a temperature swing back and forth per se. We do have some customers that use regular traditional heating oil, number 2 heating oil, in an outside tank in the winter time. When you got some real cold temps, that can get thick and restrict the flow. And, most of that, we try to refer people to use kerosene in the outside tanks through the winter products, and that has a lower, will still flow at a lower temperature.
Yeah, you mentioned the number 2 oil. That's exactly where I wanted to go next. First off, for the listeners who might not be familiar with that term, break down what is number 2 oil, and then I'll follow up with some of the technical questions that I have about it.
Yeah, so number 2 oil is a lighter oil. It's traditional, what's been used for heating and residential use. Industrial use, they might have used a heavier oil, which you get higher BTU out of. But number 2 oil is primarily used in the Northeast, and it's actually the Northeast is the number 1 consumer in the country of heating, the regular heating oil, the number 2 heating oil, and all of PAD 1. So that's pretty close to diesel fuel for customers out there. That's a product that they see every time they fuel up their car. And number 2 is quite close to that. And in New England, most of New England now has switched to an ultra-low sulfur heating oil.
So when you think about the number 2 oil, you mentioned a minute ago, when I think about oil, you talk about, heat and getting through pipelines and stuff like this. What kind of problems, you were touching on this a little bit ago, so do you see problems with, using more of an oil-based substance? Because it kind of struck me as, okay, we're using oil up here to heat stuff, but getting it from, where it's being stored to the endpoint could be an issue if you can't keep the line warm enough.
Yeah, we're quite fortunate. Most of the product comes to us to a terminal that we can pull product out of, and then most of it goes within our delivery area into our truck and into a customer's tank that same day. So it's not a product that's sitting outside per se very long. And most of what comes in into the seaport terminal, there's no restrictions. It's not like it's moving hundreds of miles across the pipeline. There is one terminal that does have that capability of moving it from southern Maine up to halfway up the state, but we're not affected by that up here.
Gotcha. So one of the things I've been asking other guests is, and your answer will no doubt be a little different, is that, what are the things that, you'd advise a client on before a project starts? You guys are serving more of a general public type, multiple clients like this. So let me ask like this: what are some of the things that you guys see and that you try to warn the consumers about before you come into a cold winter. Now, down here in Texas, we do have cold winters, but nothing like you're experiencing. But some of our other listeners, maybe in North Dakota, across the North in general, what are some of the things that you would advise them, generally speaking, to be prepared for keeping their houses warm when it's going to get really cold?
Yeah, so in regards to that, Ryan, we really try to encourage our customers to choose the right size tank for their homes. If they're going to be heating with oil, and depending on what their driveway conditions, road conditions, where they may be, if they're in a more remote location, try to encourage them to have a little bit more capacity so that they can get through the coldest part of the winter with the minimum number of deliveries. And we do the same in regards to sizing tanks with propane as well, so that if they are in a more remote location, we can access them before we get a lot of snow, bad road conditions, and really minimize the amount of deliveries they've got to get through the winter time.
Right. Yeah, and that makes sense because the last thing you want is it to be 40 below and the road's frozen over and the tank's empty.
Exactly. Yeah, and one of the things that we've tried to do, we've just introduced too in the last year and a half, is offering our customers a remote tank monitor using Teleo technology.
Yeah.
And that we're offering to our propane customers. This way, we can see on a daily basis actually what is in their tank, and they can see as well. Here on the coast of Maine, we've got a lot of seasonal houses, folks that may be in Texas, maybe in California through the winter, and they here 4 or 5 months out of the year. And that type of a product really allows them to control and be able to see what their real usage is real time on a day-to-day basis, but it also will send us a daily alert if the tank ever hit a certain threshold. Because a lot of these seasonal houses has become more and more popular on the propane end to see them not just have a propane heating system, but also to have a standby generator.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. If you guys had some kind of remote sensing technology that's sending off signals, or if you after a couple seasons, you kind of said, "Hey, Mr. Smith, we noticed that every 32 days you need a refill, so we're going to go ahead and put you on a schedule." But that's good to know that you kind of have it automated, which can get if you have a large usage for some reason, can keep people from getting in a bind.
Yes, we do a combination of both, and like I said, we just really rolling out the remote monitoring system. It's one that was designed by a company down in the Boston area, Tank Utility, and they've got a good system. They're going to be rolling out a new monitor that's going to have a dual SIM technology, so that will give coverage in most of our area, because that's the one thing with technology, with technology is, especially in a rural area, that's got to be taken into consideration, is AT&T might have great service in one town and Verizon in another, and if you're covering two towns, the number of towns that we have a product that'll serve our customers.
That's awesome. Okay, well, man, this has been really informative. Let me wrap it up with this. First, tell people if there's anything we skipped over that you want to touch on. Let's hit that now. But if there's not, then let's tell people where they can find out more about you: website, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you want to send them to.
Yeah, our website is nofrillsoil.com. And, No Frills Oil is a family-owned and operated business, founded in 1980 by Charles Birdsall Jr. and Kathleen Birdsall. And it's still a family-owned and operated business. And, we're a traditional mom-and-pop heating oil supplier and energy supplier. And it's continuing to grow. We look at slow, sustainable growth to be able to serve our customers properly.
Awesome. And we will link to that in the show notes, which is nofrills with an S oil.com. nofrillsoil.com. Again, that will be in the show notes for the listeners. Charles, thank you so much for coming on. It's one thing that I like about this show is I get to talk to people who do stuff that I never, ever will ever come across. And so, this is, first off, I don't know if I'll ever be to Maine or not. I'd like to get up there. I've been to Boston and Connecticut. It's kind of the farthest northeast I've ever been. But regardless, this is an interesting part of the industry that, I always tell people, and I think you probably heard me say this before, is that people always talk about get rid of fossil fuels. Well, it's just not practical. It's just not a reality. And a business like yours actually shows you're talking about, the difference between people freezing to death or having heat for the winter, and it's a very important service that you guys offer. So it was a pleasure to get to talk to you and hear more about this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ryan, for having me on, giving me the opportunity to share about what our company does up here, and I enjoy listening to your other podcasts as well. And hope if anybody has any questions, they can always call or visit our website, send an email. If you're up here in New England area, we also have some of the best lobster that you can get. Boston might have lobster too, but what we've got up here in Maine is even better.
That might be enough to get me up there. Charles, thank you for your time. To listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to thank our sponsor by going to GoR2.com. That's R Square Global's website, GOR2.com.